What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making this part of your day, however you're watching, however you're following the Ben Garcia Show, whether you're following on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or for free on the iHeartRadio app. We appreciate that as well. Don't forget to put a face to the voice if you're watching on YouTube. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. We do not discriminate here. All are welcome. The more, the merrier. Leave a comment. Tell me why you love me. Tell me why you hate me. I read them all. And more than anything, I respond to them all. Busy conclusion to week one. We still have, at this point, Monday Night Football to go. I will get an instant reaction, somewhat so, to you guys tomorrow. We are at home. We are in the home studio, and we have a million things to get to. So with all that being said, let's get started right here in Phoenix, Arizona. So if you didn't get to see what I predicted last week, I predicted the Arizona Cardinals would go into Buffalo, would go into Highmark Stadium, which I had no idea that was the name of the stadium now. I thought it was still Orchard Park, and then before that, New Era Field. But nevertheless, Highmark Stadium, and defeat the Buffalo Bills. It did not happen. In fact, there were a lot of eye-opening things to be taken from in that game between the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. And instantly, my reaction, just right off the cusp, a guy who is a follower of the Cardinals, a guy who is a fan of the Arizona Cardinals, someone who lives in Arizona, has been in the press conferences, has been in the halls, has shooken hands with other media members, has interviewed players. My very first assumption, my very first thought, my very first aha moment from this game was very much, quite simply, there is just an enormous gap between Josh Allen and that of Kyler Murray. Now, that doesn't mean Kyler Murray can't eventually get to the top 6 mark like I believe he could be at the peak of his powers, but yesterday was telling. Yesterday was very telling for the Arizona Cardinals, and even more so for Kyler Murray on Sunday. That was a game that if the Cardinals, I understand it's week one, but just looking at it now, and that's all I can do, I can only evaluate what I have in front of me now. And evaluating what I have in front of me, that was a game the Arizona Cardinals had to win if you actually thought of them as at the peak of their powers, potentially being a playoff team. And then you say, well, it's just week one. How could you say that? Look at the Cardinals' schedule. It is brutal. There's a chance they're 0-3 heading into week 4 playing against Cliff Kingsbury and the Washington Commanders at home. I hate to be the guy to already project losses, but in 2 weeks, they've got the Detroit Lions. And if you watched that Cardinal game yesterday, James Cook ran roughshod over this team. You don't think Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and that very much effective and attitude adjustment like offensive line is not going to come in and absolutely terminate what the Arizona Cardinals have as a pass rush? It was tough. It was bad. And here is my main takeaway. I like to have a blame pie per se. I like to look around and give blame and then go through each one of those things and say, this is why they lost here. This is why they lost there. This is why they lost here. So let me just start here. If I am doing a blame pie and I'm blaming someone here and I'm blaming a coach there and I'm blaming a position group here, this is how I would divvy it up. I would give 25% to the Arizona Cardinals defense. Listen, the Arizona Cardinals defense is atrocious. But in the Arizona Cardinals defense, no pun intended, we didn't expect them to be good. We knew what they were. I've came on this podcast multiple times and said, this Cardinals defense is worse than you think. It's not better than you think. And I had really low expectations for this Cardinals defense. And holy bleep, did they somehow go even below that. It was atrocious. It was a monstrosity. It was embarrassing. It was a lackluster defense. The secondary played decently. Mack Wilson highlighted a few times. The pass rush was so bad, James Cook was getting 4 yards a pop whenever he wanted to, and oftentimes breaking big ones down the middle of the field. Josh Allen was carving them up. Yeah, there were some missed opportunities. Yeah, I would have liked to see guys wrap up. Yeah, did they get a tough break because Zaven Collins got a bad roughing the passer call or got a bad face mask call? Sure. I'm not going to blame the game on that. Neither should you. The Cardinals got multiple breaks at the beginning of that game. One that immediately comes to mind is Kyler Murray sliding and barely getting tapped and them getting a roughing the passer call or an unnecessary roughness call or whatever. At the end of the day, penalties more or less even themselves out. The Cardinals' pass rush was atrocious. The defense was atrocious. It seemed like every third down they were converting. But we knew that was going to be the case. The question for the Cardinals' defense was always, can they be bend but don't break? And for the most part, they were. They gave, and I'll get to this in just a second, the Cardinals' offense a couple of chances to win that game still. And that's kind of more than what I could have expected for a defense that is lackluster, to say the least. And that takes me to the person that I believe gets another slice of what I believe is blame pie. Drew Petzing. Drew Petzing, if we have to be exact, probably gets about 30% of the blame pie. So as we have right now, it's 20% defense. Let's probably bump it up a little bit more for Drew Petzing, probably to around the 30%, 35% mark, somewhere around there. I'm not going to get exact, but you'll understand later what I mean. Drew Petzing, an offensive coordinator that I was very high on. I said in a video that now has thousands and thousands and thousands of clicks and hits on social media. He has the opportunity to get a head coaching job at the end of the year. That's how good his offensive schemes are. And for one half, Drew Petzing was dialing up plays. It was methodical. It was intuitive. It was fun to watch. It was James Conner up the middle here. It was James Conner swing pass here. It was rub routes over here. There wasn't much going down the field, but they took exactly what the defense could give them. And then going into the half with a 17-10 lead, which you would absolutely take if I told you the Cardinals had on Friday. And then at that point, Drew Petzing just completely abandoned everything that was working in the first half. And it was horrific play call after horrific play call. Most notably, and everyone kind of thinks this, was the horrendous, monstrosity, asinine third down run that for some reason Drew Petzing thought would be a good idea to run. It was just a coaching clinic in the first half. And then, has this guy ever coached before in his life in the second half? That's how bad it was. It was a tale of two separate halves. And Drew Petzing has to get a huge slice of blame pie. And so for that reason, he's got 35% of the blame pie. And 20% goes to the defense. 25% goes to the defense. Whatever. We're not trying to do exact decimals here. And that brings me to the guy that gets the most amount of blame for this Arizona Cardinals team not getting a victory on Sunday at Highmark Stadium against the Buffalo Bills. I hate to say it, but the guy that deserves the most blame for the Arizona Cardinals losing on Sunday, and I'll get a lot of hate for this, and I have been a proponent and a believer and a defender of this guy, but it's Kyler Murray. Although I have been someone who has defended Kyler Murray, someone who has been at the side of Kyler Murray, I have taken the brunts and the beatings for continuously saying this guy is a bona fide top 10 guy, and at the peak of his powers, a top 8 to 6 guy in the NFL. Sunday was not a great day. When you have when you have 2 timeouts, one more time, when you have 2 minutes to go, you're down by 6, and you have 3 timeouts in your back pocket, you have to win that game. That is what separates the good quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks. Does Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins convert in a 2-minute drill with 3 timeouts left down 6? Probably not. Does Josh Allen? Does Joe Burrow? Does Tom Brady? Does Patrick Mahomes? Does Peyton Manning in his prime? Absolutely they do. If we, as myself, a Kyler Murray believer, if we believe Kyler Murray can be a superstar quarterback, or we, as some of us already believe Kyler Murray is a superstar quarterback, you have to convert on those 2-minute drills with 3 timeouts. I don't care what Dan Orlovsky puts out there. I don't care whatever Cardinals defender puts out there. I have always been loyal to the truth. And I'm not out on Kyler Murray, and I still love the guy, and I'm a defender of Kyler Murray, and I still believe he's a franchise quarterback. But this game mostly rests on his shoulders. Mostly. I could blame the offensive coordinator. He's not playing in the games. I could blame the defense. I already knew how bad the defense was. But at the end of the day, the defense, and I mentioned this before, gave Kyler Murray and the offense a chance to win this game with 2 minutes to go and 3 timeouts, and they didn't take it. And as I mentioned before, that's what separates the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomeses from the Dak Prescott and the Kirk Cousins, or better known as the haves and the have-nots. And on Sunday, Kyler was a have-not. You have to win that game. And again, I don't care whatever breakdown Dan Orlovsky puts out there. If there's a streaking butt-naked wide receiver in the end zone, Kyler Murray has to hit him. And a lot of that rests on the shoulders of Drew Petzing as well. But Kyler Murray, when there's a guy open downfield, he needs to catch it. Sure, Michael Wilson didn't do him any favors. But if we are going to fix the problem, we have to be honest about what happened. And that was a very winnable game. And because of the defense, and because of Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator, and probably mostly the quarterback Kyler Murray, that was the reason why they lost on Sunday. So Dak Prescott is extended by the Dallas Cowboys. That news came down just moments before kickoff between the Cleveland Browns and the Dallas Cowboys. And before I jump really deep into the Dak Prescott extension, I've just got to say right off the bat, the most impressive win on Sunday, and potentially the most impressive win of Week 1, was the Dallas Cowboys. And this is why I've had the Dallas Cowboys winning the NFC East, and it's why I do not have the Philadelphia Eagles winning the NFC East. The Philadelphia Eagles are too much back and forth. I can't trust them, and believe it or not, the more steady Eddie organization is the Dallas Cowboys. If you had asked me on Friday, or on Saturday, or before kickoff, who would I have winning this game between the Browns and the Cowboys? I might say the Cowboys. I might lean Browns. Deshaun Watson is abysmal. But I've just got to be honest. The Dallas Cowboys going into Cleveland and dismantling the Cleveland Browns, who were a playoff team last year, a Cleveland Browns team that had one of the best defenses in the NFL last year, they dismantled them. They are the organization that you can easily get your arms around. The Philadelphia Eagles, I know they won last week. It was a really weird game. It was in Brazil. The turf was weird. Jordan Love gets injured. It was just a weird game as a whole. I was left with more questions than answers if you're just comparing between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Dallas Cowboys being able to immediately go over there and shut up the Cleveland Browns was insanely impressive. The pass rush looked lethal. DeMarcus Lawrence had 2.5 sacks. Micah Parsons was unblockable. And it looks like Mike Zimmer has really got this defense humming. And probably the most underrated coaching hire over the whole offseason carousel was probably Mike Zimmer. I mean, he was dialing it up on Sunday. And Deshaun Watson looked confused. He had no time in the pocket, bottling up those receivers. And they got some good guys. Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku played for most of that game. Jerome Ford is there. He's a more than capable back. I know the Browns lost a couple of offensive linemen, but still, just a thorough beatdown of the Dallas Cowboys to the Cleveland Browns. Now, before that, if you rewind that game a little bit, Dak Prescott gets his extension. And immediately there's this outcry, and I really tried to stay away from the groupthink. But immediately what you see is this $60 million a year average annual value. And then you see how much money was given up front, and then you start to realize, oh, this contract It's just costing them a ton right now, but Dak Prescott's cap hit likely won't be as punitive or as suffocating to allow them to be able to get more players down the road. It is a more than worth it contract for a Dallas Cowboys team that was not prepared for a future without Dak Prescott. Here is why, and the biggest reason, and something that I've been pounding and something that I've been hitting the table for weeks on end, was you had to re-sign Dak Prescott. Because Dak Prescott gives you relevancy. Dak Prescott gives you stability at a quarterback position. This is not the Atlanta Falcons. This is not the Cleveland Browns. You can't be garbage in the Dallas. You have to be formidable. You have to be good enough to at least stop everyone from coming after you week in and week out at a national media basis. You can't have Cooper Rush out there leading the Dallas Cowboys. This is, quote-unquote, America's team. Relevancy matters if you're the Dallas Cowboys. And what does Dak Prescott do? Stability, relevancy. Because of the signing bonus that Dak Prescott got, which was like $80 million or something insane, Dak Prescott's cap hit will never be that big. And yeah, do we have issues with him in January and I would say February, but they never make it that far? Sure. But the truth is the Dallas Cowboys were not well equipped for a future without Dak Prescott. What did you want them to do? Run it out with Trey Lance? Did you see how bad Trey Lance was? And they're going to be good enough this year to where they don't have a draft pick bad enough for them to be able to go get a quarterback. And if you were of the belief that Shedeur Sanders was the fix for the Dallas Cowboys, did you watch the Cornhuskers Colorado Buffaloes game the other day? Listen, you might have your issues with Dak Prescott, and so do I at times. But I can't deny that he brings relevancy and he brings stability to a quarterback position on a franchise that desperately needs it. In a division that is incredibly winnable. I have my severe doubts of the Commanders. The Giants are a tire fire, and the head coach and the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles do not like each other. Dallas Cowboys, with them extending Dak Prescott, allows them to stay relevant, allows them to stay viable in the division, and since they will have Dak for the foreseeable future, it can then allow them to be able to start planning ahead a year or two down the line, which they should have already done 3 years ago when this Dak Prescott contract had started to kick in. They can plan for life outside of Dak without being irrelevant. That is what this contract does. So immediately looking at it and just shaming the contract is immediate fanboy, groupthink, microwave take. Now, we all have our issues with Dak Prescott. I believe you can't win multiple playoff games in the same year with him. But what else were they going to do? Were they going to trade for a quarterback? What quarterback was available? Were they going to sign one? Dak's the only one available next year. Were they going to draft one? This quarterback draft doesn't look very good, and the Dallas Cowboys were not going to be good enough to get a quarterback this year in the draft. So before you just ragtag and make fun of the Dallas Cowboys, remember what happened this weekend. They went over to Cleveland in an East Coast game, East Coast time zone, on week 1 and stomped the lights out of them. And they showed they're not just a home team. And Mike Zimmer and company and Dak Prescott and company bring stability and relevancy to a franchise that is going to win the division this year, is going to have a playoff appearance. And at that point, who knows? Anything can happen in the NFL. No one thought the Packers were going to beat the Dallas Cowboys last year outside of me. Dak brings relevance. He brings leadership. He brings stability. The contract is in no way a net negative. Now let's get to the man of the hour in Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Now, if you've been watching this channel, if you have been watching on social media, you know that I have been likely one of the loudest people in sports media that have banged the drum that have said, whoa, hold up. I know we all love Caleb, and I know he's special, and I know he's insanely talented, but wait a second. He's going to be Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, and Cam Newton, and every good quality of a quarterback ever assembled rolled into one, and I'm just supposed to take it or I'm a hater, as some people say. That's what I'm supposed to do. And then we saw on Sunday what actually happens in the NFL. Rookies don't just come in to a grown man's game and start dominating, especially at the quarterback position. The only position really in the NFL that rookies come in and start electrifying everything right away is the running back position. And what do we mostly believe in the running back position in 2024? It's not as valuable. It's not as effective. You can kind of pick and pluck whichever guys you want. But this Caleb Williams thing is entirely fascinating. Because as someone like myself who has said, listen, he's probably going to be good, but he marches to the beat of his own drum. He does things a little bit differently. He's a little bit different of a leader. We have to just grab on and just believe right away he's going to be the next savior of Chicago. This was my issue with the Caleb Williams hype train. The NFL is insanely fast. It's insanely tough. And instead of just having one or two guys on the field in college football that are probably going to go to the pros with you, you have 20. You have 20 guys plus on the field that can all play. 22, if we're just rounding it off to the correct number that are on a field. Caleb Williams, what I saw on Sunday was a guy who looked lost, was a player who looked like everything was coming at him 10 times faster than his brain was ready to process. That happens. I'm not going to slander Caleb Williams. I'm not going to destroy the narrative of Caleb Williams just because I want this instant gratification. I am here to be fair. I'm not loyal to a take. I'm loyal to the truth. You will always hear me say that on this channel, on social media. If my opinion is wrong, I will change my opinion accordingly. Caleb Williams may work in the NFL. And I'm not saying he's a bust, and I'm not saying especially that he's a superstar, because this game is incredibly hard. But what I saw on Sunday was a quarterback that looked lost, was a rookie that looked like a deer in headlights, was a guy that for the first time in his football career said, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. Because in college football, you're the man. In high school football, you're the man. You'll maybe play against 5, 6, 7 guys in your high school and college who will be in the pros with you. Then when you snap that ball and look at how fast everyone is moving and how quickly the game needs to progress, that's what happens. It's why I always push back on this narrative of Caleb Williams is going to be awesome. Caleb is going to run a rough shot over the league. Nick Wright has him in the Super Bowl. Other people have at the top of their quarterback tiers. Everyone is telling me he's already a top 8 quarterback. And I just continued to beat the drum of, could I watch just one game of Caleb before I anoint him the next CJ Stroud of this year as a rookie, the next elite quarterback to come out of the draft? You have to let this stuff bake. And not to mention, Caleb Williams has a steep hill to climb, and it's not just the expectations that everyone has laid out for him. For those that don't know, let me paint you a picture. The Chicago Bears, not the Browns, not the Cardinals, not the Falcons, not the insert horrific team here. The Bears are the worst franchise in NFL history when it comes to quarterbacking. They have ruined every quarterback that has came through their doorways. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer. They've never had a franchise quarterback. And now Caleb Williams not only has to live up to the expectations that were set for him pre-draft, that he is going to be one of the best bona fide talents in the NFL, he also has to resurrect a dead franchise. He also has to basically excel past all the mediocrity that is the New York Bears, that is the Chicago Bears. You can't just skim over that. I don't care how great a guy is. Andrew Luck was phenomenal. At the end of the day, he couldn't rise above the dysfunction because of his health, because the Indianapolis Colts were so terrible taking care of the guy. So this idea that Caleb was just going to run roughshod over the league and he wasn't going to have any bumps or any bruises and he was just going to pick up with the speed of the NFL despite playing in college football for the past 2.5 years. He was just going to pick up where he left off? No. And it's this idea that we should slow down on judging quarterbacks, slow down on just immediately having confirmation bias the second someone does something cool in preseason. Because Caleb Williams is bearing a very heavy cross. He has not only to live up to the expectations that everyone has set for him pre-draft, but he has to excel past the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears, who have literally never had a franchise quarterback, who have literally never had a 4,000-yard passer, who have literally never had any real adults at the quarterback position. Caleb needs to rise above all of that. So although I've always been saying, yes, let's be careful about the Caleb Williams hype, let's also not go too far the other direction. Because now I see people saying, oh, he's a bust, didn't play well, and didn't even have 100 yards. There's only 2 other quarterbacks that have won games in their rookie seasons or won starts with less than 100 yards passing, and one of them was Desmond Ridder. No, I don't think that Caleb Williams is the next Desmond Ridder. I think he's going to work in the NFL. Now, I have said, how well is he going to work? I don't know. Because Caleb Williams has never been told no a day in his life. Caleb Williams has only been told how amazing he is. He's going to have to move past that. And he is going to have to, at this point, excel past the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears. So I'm not on the side of Caleb Williams is already a bust, and I'm not on the side of it's okay, he's still going to be a superstar. Let's just let Caleb Williams bake. Because everyone went right past my judgments of, he's a little bit of an odd character. He marches to the beat of his own drum. He does things a little differently. It's probably going to work, but I just want to watch one NFL game first to make sure it's going to work. And now you have people going too far the other direction. He's a bust. That's not the case. I don't know if Caleb Williams is going to work in the NFL. I think he is. But not only, like I've mentioned before, does he have to live up to the expectations that we have all set for him, he has to do that while excelling past the dysfunction of the Chicago Bears, who have ruined every single quarterback they've ever touched in their franchise history. So you have to allow this guy some time to bake. Because what I saw on Sunday was a young quarterback that was shocked at how fast the game was. And it's going to take a second for him to learn how to process these things much more quickly than he was doing so on Sunday. So one of my boldest predictions of the year was that the Cincinnati Bengals weren't going to be very good this year. And part of the reasoning that I have laid out in front of this, and I also said this about the San Francisco 49ers, that they'll pull back as well. Maybe not be as atrocious as I believe the Cincinnati Bengals will likely be this year. Noisy off seasons lead to always disappointing regular seasons. Joe Burrow has never had a full off season with his entire group. The defense is not as good as it used to be. We're not so sure if Brian Callahan was the straw that stirred the drink of the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase doesn't have a contract. T. Higgins doesn't have a contract. It's been just a monstrosity of noise. And I basically said, similar to the San Francisco 49ers, let's just relax a little bit on the Cincinnati Bengals expectations. First off, they're never a good team under the Joe Burrow era in the first 5 or 6 weeks of a season. They have all this noise. Jamar Chase isn't happy. He played fine on Sunday. T. Higgins now has a hamstring injury. Oh, and wants a contract extension that he's not going to get. The offensive line still isn't very good. They lost their right tackle in Jonah Williams from last year. Their defense isn't very good. And oh, surprise, surprise, the New England Patriots, a team that is projected to be one of the worst teams in the NFL this year, ran roughshod all over them. This is what distractions does to a franchise. It's what has me worried about the San Francisco 49ers expectations, and it's what has me feeling already vindicated on my belief of the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals were terrible on Sunday. Joe Burrow was not good. No, I don't think Joe Burrow's a bust. No, I don't think Joe Burrow's overrated. That, I believe, is groupthink and nonsense and Twitter and trolls and things that you shouldn't give 2 cents of your time to, or 2 seconds of your time to. This is clearly a product of noisy off seasons lead to disappointing regular seasons. Jamar Chase wants a contract 2 years before he's set to get a deal. That usually doesn't happen with wide receivers. It didn't happen with Justin Jefferson. It doesn't happen with a lot of rookie wide receivers. Normally, they get that payday the year before they're scheduled to go under contract. Jamar Chase says, nope, I want it now. With a notoriously cheap owner that the Cincinnati Bengals have. Joe Burrow is coming off of an injury from last year, where we all know this at this point. Joe Burrow is like one more serious injury away from the Cincinnati Bengals potentially having to think about the long-term health and long-term viability of Joe Burrow as their quarterback. And then you have the T. Higgins thing. Already injured, wants a contract, probably going to take his time coming back because he doesn't want to screw himself out of a payday. The offensive line's not great. And the maybe most volatile thing that happened this offseason, they lost Brian Callahan, their OC. We're not sure if Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, is the right guy for this position. We're not sure. If they make the playoffs again this year with Brian Callahan gone, we will be sure. But we're not completely of the belief that Zach Taylor is a bona fide top 8 head coach in the NFL. We're not. And if Brian Callahan goes over and lights it up with the Tennessee Titans and their offense with a rookie quarterback who or with a second-year quarterback who wasn't very good last year, actually starts to look a little bit on the better side with the Tennessee Titans, then we're thinking maybe Zach Taylor wasn't really responsible for the Bengals' success. And this is what happens. This is why I predicted the Bengals to be one of the worst teams in the division this year. It's why I predicted them likely to be the surprise team to miss out on the playoffs. Sure, there's some belief in me that maybe they'll figure it out and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase will figure it out. But outside of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, where's the talent on the Cincinnati Bengals? There's not a ton of it. A lot of those guys are gone. Jesse Bates is gone. Joe Mixon is gone. Where is it? So not only do you have a team that, in my opinion, is lacking some of the talent you need to get to the playoffs. Tyler Boyd, also one of those guys who's gone. So not only are you lacking a team with a ton of talent to get into the playoffs, but now you're lacking the discipline that a team needs that doesn't have a ton of talent to get into the playoffs. There wasn't a lot of discipline this offseason. It was a lot of nonsense. It was a lot of chatter. It was a lot of Jamar Chase being upset. It was a lot of T. Higgins being upset. And that can't happen. If you're not going to be as talented as the team next to you, you got to be more connected than the team next to you. And it's why the Bengals are going to be due until they figure it out, until they turn the ship around, until there's more discipline, accountability, and a standard that everyone holds themselves to. This is what you're going to see with the Cincinnati Bengals. This is what the disappointment is going to look like if you're the people of Cincinnati. Losing games to teams that you should win. Because not only do you lose a home game from this year that you already had scheduled, you lose that home game because you lost at home clearly. You lose to a gimme win as well in the New England Patriots. Now you got to find that win somewhere else. And now you're already behind the 8 ball. And in an AFC that is loaded with the Texans and the Chiefs and the Bills, you have to make up ground already. This is what is going to make the Cincinnati Bengals season so predictably disappointing. You can't have all this chatter inside the locker room. Jamar Chase wants a contract 2 years early. He's not going to get it. Joe Mixon is not here anymore. That's a playmaker that we wanted as our running back. Now he's not here. T. Higgins wants a deal. He's already injured. He's got a hamstring injury. He's not going to get his deal. A defense that already has lost a bunch of key pieces. Those guys are out the door. The defense isn't going to be as good. Brian Callahan walks out that door. A guy that we're not sure is the straw that stirred the drink for the Cincinnati Bengals or not. And not to mention the elephant in the room for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow's health. He's had a torn ACL. He's had issues with his wrist. He's missed games here for nicks, bumps, and bruises. And at this point, you're at the point with Joe Burrow that if he has another major injury that keeps him out for an extended period of time, you're thinking about the longevity of Joe Burrow as your quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. So all that chatter that was done in the offseason and being a team that doesn't have as talent as you did in years past with Joe Mixon gone, with Tyler Boyd gone, with Jesse Bates gone over the years, and you substitute that discipline and accountability for noisiness and ridiculousness in the locker room, whether it's contracts or whether it's injury histories. This is the disappointment you get for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it was so predictable, and it was so easy to spot out, and it was so avoidable, but because everyone wanted to get theirs in the same offseason and not focus on the product of the field, this is what happens. You lose easily winnable games at home against a New England Patriots team that is not very good and will still finish amongst the worst in the NFL. An incredibly predictable, disappointing start to the season for the Cincinnati Bengals. Thanks for tuning into the Ben Garcia Show. We appreciate you making us a part of your day. However you're watching, however you're following, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Consider subscribing. Consider commenting. Consider telling a friend about the Ben Garcia Show. We appreciate however you're watching, however you're listening, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or you're putting a face to the voice and you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate all of that. I will get an instant reaction to you guys about noon tomorrow on the 49ers and New York Jets game that I just nearly forgot about. I almost said Green Bay Packers, but we know Aaron Rodgers is not there anymore, or hasn't been for more or less 2 years now. We appreciate you tuning in, and I'm Benjamin Garcia, and it's been the Ben Garcia Show.